Hi, so in today's video I'm going to be talking about how to avoid rejection from PhD applications. And I think the first very important thing to know is PhD applications take quite a lot of time and they are an investment of your energy, and sometimes they can lead to rejections. But I think the difference between kind of an undergraduate application and a PhD application is you're going to expect there to be at least one rejection in amongst your applications. It is very rare that all of your applications are going to come back positively. Sometimes there's just reasons that you won't be a good fit that aren't to do with the quality of you as a researcher, but are more to do with maybe the supervisor and you don't gel, or maybe your expertise or the passion that you're bringing isn't quite for the project in the way you thought it might be. So the first tip that I have is invest a regular portion of time on applications. I think it's kind of important to set out your week and think, okay, on a Monday from 2 till 4 every week, I'm going to spend time looking for things to apply to, writing my CV, whatever it is that you need to do for that kind of stage in your PhD. But having that regular portion of time is going to mean that during that time you're going to think, okay, I need to be doing this in order to not avoid doing kind of 10 hours in a row towards the deadlines of all these applications. So if you can, try and schedule that time in. I know it can be maybe quite difficult if you've got quite a hectic schedule, but make sure that you have got that time set aside. The second tip is think about what skills you're going to need in the application process. This maybe applies a little bit more if you're going for an industry role, as there's going to be kind of logistics challenges, stats challenges that are kind of going to be online. With a PhD, it's very unusual for you to have to do kind of a test to do it, but what can happen is they can ask you to explain a solution to a problem, especially in mathematics PhDs this could happen. So practice explaining concepts, practice speaking in a clear voice, and maybe practice words of the terminology, make sure you're pronouncing things correctly. If there's any famous mathematicians that you're going to mention, make sure that you're pronouncing their name correctly, especially if it's maybe a foreign name you're not familiar with, because sometimes the way your lecturers might pronounce something isn't the standard convention, and it can be quite jarring if everyone else is pronouncing a name differently to you. The third tip that I have is for your CV. So I have a couple of tips that I've jumbled all into one. But firstly, make your CV in advance and maximum make 2 copies of your CV. One that's designed for industry applications you may be doing alongside, and one that's designed for PhD specific applications. So in your PhD application, you want to have your name, your education, and then I would suggest a heavy emphasis on research projects, times where you've been spending a long time on a project, as well as some kind of employment-based experience. They can be very valuable too, but you really want to highlight why you are a good researcher and times you've been able to be dedicated to something for a long time. Each time you do your PhD application, you're going to want to reflect on your CV, see if there's anything you can put in bold. Maybe there's a module that's especially relevant for this application, but don't spend hours and hours combing through your CV to make it the perfect CV for this role. Unless it's kind of your dream institution, dream PhD, and you want to invest that time, putting that time in is going to maybe be better spent working on the answers that will come a bit later. So with that, my fourth tip is your cover letter / question answers. So sometimes you'll be on like an application portal and they will ask you normally about 3 questions. They can be varying amounts of words. Often it'll be things like, why do you want to do a PhD? Maybe something specific relating to your specific PhD application. My suggestion is write it in Word, write it in some text editor so that you can have spell check, grammar check, whatever, so that it all makes sense. Maybe get a friend to proofread. This is a good point in which to invest a little bit more time in your application process. Spend time fine-tuning your answers. If you write a very good answer to why you want to do a PhD, you can save that answer, save the question so that you know what you were answering and it's easy to find later. But what I did was I had a document and I had all of my answers from each application I did, and then I was able to carry them forward, so each iteration was getting slightly better without me having to spend time rewriting and re-grammar checking. Put the effort into the kind of questions and answers is always a good idea. Equally, another just a little quick tip is put your name and put the institution you're applying to in the header of documents relating to it. So if you have to submit kind of an A4 page with your question answers, put your name, put important pieces of information in the header and make sure your file names are appropriately labeled. That can make it really beneficial if your PhD supervisor has got 3 documents and one of them's called your name, what you're applying for. It's going to make it so that that doesn't get lost in maybe their downloads folder or any way that they might be viewing these applications. My is to read the PhD advert multiple times through. So you're going to be checking for keywords that they mention that you can maybe embed in your CV or embed in your answers. What skills are they really looking for? And just spend time really understanding what they're looking for. Are they looking for someone who's really passionate about the subject? Are they looking for someone who's really passionate about the processes of finding things out? Maybe they want an experimental scientist who's going to be really interested in lab work. Finding out what they want, figuring out if you're a fit, and it's always good to keep reading through and just checking for things. My sixth suggestion would be set deadlines to get your applications done by. So kind of going back to that 2 hours a week kind of thing. If in those 2 hours you've not got it done and you're kind of sitting on the fence of whether to apply or whether to keep making your application better, I would say maybe sleep on it and then apply in the morning, or kind of set yourself deadlines well before the application deadline actually is, just so that it's off your mind. It's sent off and you can then focus on getting your coursework done, whatever other commitments you have, or maybe thinking about the next application. What you don't want to do is kind of be in a position where you're spending maybe a week thinking things over, thinking it over again. Even if you're not sure about the role, it's always better to apply and then turn down an opportunity for interview than to kind of pull out at the last minute. Always try and stay positive. And that's kind of the final tip, 6.5. Stay positive throughout the process. It's likely that you will have a rejection at some point. It's not guaranteed, but neither is any successes. And it can be quite disheartening when you are rejected, especially if it's early on. But it's not indicative of whether or not you're going to be successful on the whole. And keeping a positive mentality as best as you can when applying can help you to have enthusiastic answers and can help you sell yourself more in your answers rather than kind of struggling to come up with the good things about yourself if you're kind of feeling a bit lower in self-esteem after a rejection. I hope that that's been helpful. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.